They're rebuilding the talent tree from ground up in a 0.7 patch. Let's go, yo. We definitely have to get into the hype and see exactly what is going on with the new Ret rework. Since I've had to listen to Marcelian play Ret for years and also had Ret podcasts with the big three crafters, I kind of know some things about Ret. I might be biased on a bunch of things and I might not be right on a bunch of others, but I think I might have a good idea of what cool Ret could be. So let's see, which is a pretty short post, but let's see if we can get a little bit of hype going for the Ret Paladins. A letter from Blizzard. Well met. The iconic Uther quotes from Hearthstone. We're doing a substantial rework to the Retribution talent tree in patch 10.07. Rebuilding the Retribution talent tree from the ground up means significant changes ahead. However, the talent tree itself will not be available in our first PTR build, so initial testing on the PTR will be missing important context. They're rebuilding the talent tree from ground up in a 0.7 patch. Let's go, yo. Oh, this is amazing. Oh, I mean, it could be Bosch, right? It might not be good, but let's see. Nonetheless, would like to share our major goals for Retribution with you. So it's just goals. We don't have any specifics. Button bloat. Retribution Paladins currently have a fairly large number of abilities, and some of these feel unnecessary and inefficient. We're working to tone this down and have a more focused set of abilities and cooldowns. This is hilarious considering that a lot of people meme Ret Paladins for having few buttons or being easy spec, and they've been memeing this for years. So apparently that's button bloat. This is kind of a dangerous concept. Last time I really religiously played Ret Paladin was in Shadowlands, obviously, and I've tested it in beta, but it's weird because it doesn't feel impactful to push a lot of buttons. Crusader Strike is whatever, Consecration is whatever, Judgment is okay, but it doesn't feel like it's an impactful thing. So if button bloat will address the value of cooldowns, the value of buttons that the paladins will be pressing, then I'm all for this. Stacking modifiers. There are currently several talents and abilities that provide stacking bonuses, which can make for confusing and messy playstyles. Yes, the deals extreme burst damage, but in return leaves your core abilities feeling unsatisfying and undertuned. Yes, we intend to significantly change this. Yes, we want your core abilities to feel good and powerful when used in all situations. Yes! Dude, like, if we take Fury Warrior as an example, pressing Raging Blow is fun. Placing Bloodthirst is, it's filler, but you do get a little bit of heal. You might even get an Enrage proc. It's fun. Those are like filler buttons, right? Pressing Judgment and Crusader Strike is like, sure, you build Holy Power, but come on. Yes, make them more impactful. Oh my god, are we gonna main Ret Paladins? Shut up. This doesn't mean we're reducing all elements of burst damage, but we do want to make burst more purposeful and deliberate while also allowing options that provide sustained damage. Yes, I am a fan of having multiple ways of dealing damage instead of one big fat cooldown, which are wings. Obviously, Rets do damage outside of wings. They have mini cooldowns like Divine Toll, Final Reckoning, Execution Sentence, or Wake of Ashes, if these can be called mini cooldowns, but they're just like big abilities. They're big abilities, and it's not it. Like, as much as it pains me to say, Survival Hunter kind of does this slightly better than Ret in terms of theme, but hey, bias alert. Survivability. Oh, hot topic, survivability. Our previous Ret rants that we've had, that you can check on our channel, address the survivability of Rets, and I think we reacted to Savix having a take on this as well. So let's see. Retribution Paladins currently have one of the highest death rates. There's a statistic that they have for this. Retribution Paladins currently have one of the highest death rates across all forms of content. Yo, listen, as a noob Ret Paladin, I definitely felt that we're squishy, and I've addressed this multiple times, but Marcelian has a big point to say about this as an old-time Ret Paladin fan, and he's always complaining. And the thing is, some of the times I wouldn't agree with him because obviously I wasn't, that much into the context of Ret Paladin. Like, what do you mean, man? You have Pony, you have Bubble, what you mean? I've made the arguments that the majority of people are making, but Marcelian's like, nah, man, it's not enough, And there's an actual statistic that says Rets die most than probably all of the other specs out of all of the content, not just like raids or dungeons or PvP, all of it. For a plate wearing class, oh my god, yes, plate wearing class, please, I haven't read the rest of it. Please make the argument that a plate wearing class is supposed to be tanky. Plate wearing class is supposed to be tanky, especially if you're a hybrid. What are they saying? For a play-wearing class with hybrid healing, this doesn't feel right. Yes, we're looking to strengthen them through a mixture of passive bonus and improvements to active abilities and cooldown. Yes, while keeping the degree of challenge that results from being a melee-based spec. Yes, all melee-based specs have the challenge of being right into the thick of the action and being potential subjects to cleave mechanics, to frontal clones, to really quick fires. It's not that it will be something specific for red. So yes, that's always a risk. Please make them more tanky. Please, please, please. I will main Ret Paladins if they're going to be tanky and have an interesting rotation. I will main it. I'm saying it right now. Maneuverability. Here we go. We recognize that there's an issue here and we hope to make some improvements. However, we want to set clear expectations. Retribution Paladin should not expect to gain the mobility of rogues. That's fine. This is maybe something that I'm a little bit less excited by how they're phrasing it. I don't know what expectations they have, because from a different perspective, you could say that Pony, Divine Steed rather, is a lot of mobility, but it's weird the way that it's implemented because it costs a lot of talent points to get that mobility. It's the only mobility you have, and it's a very specific mobility. Once again, I want to make the comparison between Ret Paladins and Unholy/Frost DKs, both being melee specs, both being plate specs, both being wheelchair classes. Now, where Ret Paladins have Divine Steed, and that's about it, DKs have the baseline passive of Death's Advance, which makes them unable to be reduced below 75% movement speed, and if they press Death's Advance, they gain a burst of speed for quite a few seconds. The second thing that they have is Wraith Walk, which breaks them out of roots. Sure, Red Paladins have freedom that breaks them out of roots as well, and it gives them a movement speed that, of course, they cannot attack while in Wraith Walk or use any abilities, but they can move from A to B. These abilities are not enough to make Death Knights a mobile melee DPS. They're by no means a mobile melee DPS. They also have grips, which are kind of a way to deal with immobile classes or reach, which grips are not universally good for lack of uptime on the target, because you cannot grip a boss to yourself. If you're the only one out of a melee range out of everybody else, you're not going to grip a mob and force everybody else not to be able to hit the mob. That's not how grips work, right? So DKs have clear issues with their mobility, but their mobility tools interact with some of the mechanics and give them ways to deal with things. You can say that Ret Paladins have freedom, that they can break them out of roots the same way Wraithwalk would. However, that's also on them, and that's also a utility that they normally would bring to the party. Wraithwalk is not considered a utility that DKs bring to the party. So you have to sacrifice a utility that you would bring to the party to use for yourself, and this is the theme of Ret Paladins. Because not only are DKs immobile and have reduced mobility tools, they also have defensive cooldowns, because we can kind of match maneuverability with survivability at the same time. They have defensive cooldowns that make them immune certain things. They have AMS that can make them immune magic damage. Of course, you can immune magic damage, but you can immune magic damage effects that can also slow you. You have Icebound Fortitude that breaks you out of stuns, which is also an impaired movement ability that you might be able to get stunned, and then by the time you get out of the stun, the mobs will be away, and or in arenas you might just be too far away from your targets and you have to like trudge along and try to get to the target, right? But you can break out of that with a DK. You cannot break that with a Paladin unless you use Bubble. And Bubble is the silliest argument towards Ret Paladins and Paladins in general defensive capability that people have made over years. I think it's only Red, because I think Holy and Prod have more defensives that they can access. Bubble is a silly argument because Bubble is a specific mechanic that in a group, or if we would argue that there's a reason to bring Ret Paladins to content, Bubble would be one of them because they can immune mechanics. That means that they will not be able to use Bubble for personal protection most of the time, or if they do, then they essentially neuter themselves in terms of what they can bring as terms of utility for their group. Same thing applies to Freedom. If they use it on themselves, that limits the amount of utility that they bring to the group. Same thing with Bop as well, that Ret Paladins have. DKs don't have to make this sacrifice. DKs don't have to sacrifice their utility to save their party. Their utility is separate. You have AMZ, which is separate. You have grips, which are separate, right, from your survivability. But Reds don't have that, so they're kind of like at a weird juxtaposition that you can definitely make comparisons in between. Since Warriors, the other played melee, is like a totally different beast. They have mobility, they have defensive, they kind of have almost everything. But that's my take on Red. So if you want Red Paladins to have an identity of like, okay, there might not be as mobile, change some of their kits. You don't have to give them like a gazillion amount of divine steeds, but change some of their kits. Marcelian had a point. There should be a talent. I forget about what the name is, but when you judgment a target, you get a burst of speed for a couple of seconds. There's also an ability that I think in Legion beta they were supposed to add it, which is if you ever played Heroes of the Storm, the hero Tyrael there had an ability where you throw your sword at a specific point in the ground, does damage, whatever it does. It can have a lot of effects, but you can also teleport to that sword. And I think that would be a badass ability for Red Paladins. That is mobility in a sense, but that's not like physical mobility where you're just super fast as a paladin. You can be this unstoppable juggernaut of light and vengeance, but you don't have to like be super fast like a warrior is. You can just like use the power of the light to, you know, get to a position to kind of like blink to a target. I think this is amazing for Paladins, and I hope that this is part of their maneuverability. If they add either of these two abilities on top of the Divine Steed, you can solve a lot of issues with mobility, and you can bring Red Paladins in the same kind of boiling pot of wheelchair class as DKs as well, where they have some tools that don't necessarily conflict with the utility that they bring to the group. Utility, okay. The changes that Dragonflight brought to Retribution have caused some conflict for players. Is it because most of the utility is the general class talent tree, and the general class talent tree for Paladins have some of the most amount of nodes that give you damage, so you kind of have to pick the damage and not pick the utility? Is this it? Forcing the Red Paladin to choose between providing benefits to their group or benefiting themselves. Points! Hello! Called it. This choice can be interesting, but due to the way this has historically worked for Paladins, it hasn't felt right in Dragonflight. Yes, so we're looking to make changes here that allow you to feel good and improve your own damage while also providing the group benefits that you're used to. Yes! We're also looking into additional utility improvements for Paladins in general, I guess, during the 10.07 test cycle, so we can assume that this is mostly going to be addressed towards the class talent tree. We're looking forward to hearing your feedback on the points above, as well as anything else about Retribution that you'd like to share. Oh my god, this is so good. Thank you, devs, for being open-minded and reaching out to the community. I know it kind of sucks that it took a little bit longer, definitely way longer than other specs, and Ret has been in the bucket of specs that needed love for years. While Enhancement and Feral have received some very favorable treatment in the last couple of patches, Reds have kind of been left behind. I feel like Survival is kind of there as well, so I'm hoping that Survival is being addressed at one point, but Red deserves love. We want, listen guys, how cool would it be to have at least one patch meta where Red is the best DPS in all content? How awesome would that be? We've had almost all of the classes, almost all of the specs be OP or at least super good in at least one patch. I'm struggling to find one. Whereas for the most amount of time, Affliction and Arcane have been poop. They're killing it right now. Feral has been poop. Feral is killing it right now. Am I missing anything? I don't know. I think we're getting there. This is an amazing mindset. So I'm hoping that once the 10.07 PTR is up, we can have more information. We're definitely gonna make a video on it, that's for sure, and let you guys know. So bonsai for Paladins. Happy day. Christmas day, not really. It's January, close to February, but it is what it is. Hey,
I've been loving it then, I still love it now. Still, I play WoW. Still, I play WoW. Getting better every day, let me show you how. Cause still, I play WoW. Still, I play WoW. It's getting harder to stay, but at the end of the day, it's a guilty pleasure, so just log in and play. Whether it's classic or retail, I'ma do a /bow. Still, I play WoW.